You're listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast, and I'm your host, Abuja based photographer Tavishima Ayede. Now, the usual recap. In the last episode, we went into the first part of what was looking at pushiness and assertiveness in wedding sales. Now, this was an intro to the idea that some people don't want to be pushy in sales, and that's because there's a misconception about what being pushy is or what being assertive is. So, people think they're being pushy in sales when they have a personality. When they have personality flaws, if we can put it that way, if they come across as too aggressive, or maybe they think they're inconsiderate, but it isn't really about personality, but it's more about failing to ask questions in the sales process, in the conversations that we have with our clients, or our prospective clients rather. Because when we don't ask questions, we don't get a sense of what they want, what they need, what they can afford, or if there's any sense of urgency in the decision process. And when we fail to do that, that is when we come across as pushy, regardless of whether we are on the more rah-rah aggressive side or if we're on the more timid or mousy side. So it's not a personality flaw. It's about failing to ask questions to find out if they want, they need, if they can afford your service, and if there's any urgency about making the decision. So today, we're going to look into the second part of the discussion, which is the assertive bit, about being assertive in sales. Now, in my own opinion, I think there's also a bit of a misconception here, because people assume that it's also a personality thing when you say you are assertive or an overtly assertive person when you're trying to sell to someone, and that is not completely true. There's a certain level of self-assessment that is involved when we're talking about assertion. And since we're talking about business here, there's also a certain level of assessment of the business opportunity. So this is what I'm trying to say. If you have a poor assessment of yourself, or if you have a poor assessment of the business need, then you're going to be displaying what people typically refer to as being passive. So you have passive voice or passive body language. If you had a good self-assessment of yourself and a good assessment of the business opportunity, then you're going to have more confident voice and more assertive tone and body language. Basically, assertiveness. Okay, this is how I like to define assertiveness. I came across some material a while back, a really long time ago, from this website. I think it's called Bookboon. That's BOOKBOON.com. So they have some really interesting free PDFs there, business books and other things that you can learn from. And there was a book there about assertiveness, which explored an assertiveness and passiveness or passivity. Forgive me, I can't remember the term. Which explored these things and put them in a nice matrix that I like to think about when I'm thinking about these sorts of things. So now, looking at assertiveness, some people have this idea that they're okay and you are okay. Okay, let me put it this way. If I think I'm okay and I think my prospective customers are okay, then that is being assertive, because I'm confident in my self-assessment. I'm confident in the business assessment that they want, they need, they can afford, and there's some urgency. And so because of that, I'm going to be comfortable and I'm going to be able to use assertive and direct language. Now, being aggressive now rather than assertive would be if you think you're okay, but you haven't gotten a good assessment of the business opportunity there. So you know you're okay, but you haven't gotten a sense of whether the prospective customer is okay or not, and you don't care. In that case, you're now going to come across as assertive aggressive. That's because you're only focusing on yourself. And then the last option here is being passive or passivity. Like I said, forgive me, I'm not sure what the right technical term is. And this is you're passive when you're only focusing on the other person, but you're not paying attention to yourself at all. So I guess what I've been trying to say in not a very elegant way is when you say you're being assertive or aggressive in the sales process, it is not necessarily a question about what kind of personality that you have. It's about how you're sizing up yourself and how you're sizing up the business opportunity or sizing up your prospective customer. So if you're sizing up yourself and yourself only, and you don't really care about your customer, you're not putting enough into assessing them and their own needs, then you're going to come across as aggressive, regardless of what your personality type is. And then if you try to pay attention to what it is that you're going to get out of it, and you're also assessing and paying attention to them, that's more of like a balance scale. That would be assertive behavior. And then on the other hand, if you only pay attention to them, but you're not putting your own needs into the mix, basically the customer says jump and you say how high, without worrying about how it's going to affect your deliverables, your timelines, your profit margins, and stuff like that, then you are being passive. So those are the things that we have to look at when we are considering these things about being pushy or assertive. Because a lot of us fall into the trap. I can speak up to wedding photographers about this because, well, I'm a wedding photographer, so they're the people that I hang out with the most, wedding photographers and wedding planners. Now, a lot of us, when we are thinking about these things and we don't think about it in these clear terms, and we fall back into looking at personality, it models up the conversation, and then it also gives us the impression that these the variables that we're dealing with are fixed and we can't change. So if you think you're a mousy individual, then you just throw your hands up in the air like, well, that's me, I'm mousy, I'm introverted, there's nothing I can do about this, I can't sell. So I think these are better frameworks for looking into for examining whether you're being pushy or assertive in the sales process. So always pay attention to qualifying during the process. That means asking questions to be sure that you get a sense of what they want, what they need, what they can afford, and if there's any sense of urgency. And you also should be paying attention to how you are assessing yourself and your customers and their needs. So think about it in terms of a scale. If you're paying too much attention to you but not enough attention to them, you're being aggressive. If you're paying attention to you and you're paying attention to them 50-50, that's being assertive. If you're paying attention to them alone to the detriment of your own interest, then you're being passive. So always ask questions to track and to be sure that you are competent against the business opportunity, and you'll be fine. Now, listening to the last episode, I realized that I missed out one of the recaps, and that was the recap when we had the episode. I think that'll now be 2 episodes back, about the passion economy, which was looking at the idea about whether your passion should be your business. Summary, for those of you who haven't listened to it, my idea around these sorts of things is that passion is irrelevant, and instead we should look towards market validation. I'm not going to go over the whole thing again today, but for those of you who haven't listened to it, that's 2 episodes back. I think it's a really interesting conversation, since a lot of people get into this industry because it is, quote and unquote, my passion. It is what I love to do. I love taking photographs. I loved planning my sister's wedding, so because of that, I think I should be in the wedding industry. So that's all we have for today. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. As usual, for those of you who have any questions, queries, comments, or suggestions, you can hit me up on email That's ayede.tave@gmail.com. That is ayede.taver@gmail.com. AYED, that is D for Delta E, dot TAV for Victor ER @gmail.com. Thank you very much, guys, for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.